We're a killer species. It's instinctive. It's the same with you.
The instinct can be fought. We're human beings with the blood of middling savages.
On our hands. But we can stop it.
We can admit that we're killers, but we're not going to kill today.
That's all it takes. Knowing that we're not going to kill today.
Message! Hello, you beautiful nerds. A few years ago, I remember hearing about the creator of Battlestar Galactica developing a sci-fi series that sounded nothing like Battlestar Galactica. The premise seemed intriguing and potentially groundbreaking, but it was premiering on a streaming network I assumed was gonna go the way of Quibi, and the concept sounded way too intellectual to have any real legs in this world where whiz-bang sci-fi flicks are the only ones that everyone seems to watch. Even Star Trek feels more like Star Wars nowadays. But the other day, after I finished Mythic Quest and was contemplating watching Ted Lasso again, I saw that Ramore's show was about to start its 3rd season. And I was like, what the what? People actually watch that show? Again, I like the idea enough, but I'm a playwright slash sci-fi nerd. Who the fuck is watching this show except for me and aeronautical engineers who loved The West Wing? But much to my surprise, people are watching it, and mucher to my surprise, the show itself is magnificent. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about what we're talking about. So have a glass of cognac and smoke yourself a pot cigarette. And let's talk about... But first, a prelude. In the year of our Lord 1996, television series Star Trek The Next Generation released its first proper theatrically released film called... I say proper because there was Generations, which was... It's not very good. We don't talk about that. But First Contact though, that movie fucks. It's so well paced and fun, but one of the more interesting things about it is that we get a glimpse of the world before the Federation. We know from Star Trek lore that there was this huge world war that destroyed everything, and with the help of some advanced technology from some friendly aliens, humanity built a utopia on Earth.
A lot has changed in the past 300 years. People are no longer obsessed with the accumulation of things. We have eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions.
That idea always fascinated me because it posits the question touched on in the Star Trek universe: how does a society create a utopia? How does everyone get on the same page and collectively decide that greed, racism, and sexism are, you know, bad? And the co-writer of First Contact and the co-creator of For All Mankind plants a seed to answer those questions by changing one pivotal moment in history. The 3rd season just wrapped up, but I want to talk about the entire series so far and what makes the show so damn good. Minor spoilers going forward. I am going to reveal some stuff about a few characters, but I'm going to try not to ruin your viewing experience if you haven't seen the series yet. But anyway, the show starts with a simple idea. What if in the 60s, the Russians beat America to the moon? It's easy to imagine that everything would have probably been the same. Disney World, Bon Jovi, something, Barack Obama. I mean, the space race wasn't a war or anything like that. So the potentiality of a strange new world being wrought from that decision seems low if you don't really think about it too much. But this series takes into account that our country was being run by an impetuous, petulant little shit at the time. So this makes things get, in scientific terms, fucking nutty nuts.
What would change if the Soviets landed first? Spoiler alert, everything.
After Russia makes it to the moon, with their first female cosmonaut no less, Nixon vows to beat Russians at their own game. If the Russians are gonna be the first to put a woman on the moon, then we're gonna be the first ones to put 4 women in space, and we're gonna build a permanent base on the moon. Arguably, what this show does best in the 1st season is display how the road to social progression is so often paved with fucking bullshit. It calls into question how we reach these progressive cornerstones in our pursuit of equality. I've spoken before about marginalized people being depicted in stereotypical ways, or the motivations behind characters being shoehorned into a movie or TV series simply because they're queer or a person of color, because the decision isn't to help disenfranchised individuals. It's to save face in public and pacify angry critics. Like, see, we don't hate you guys. We let one of you play with us. The female astronauts complete the program faster than any of the men have, have because it's been streamlined to be shorter so Nixon can get them in space as soon as possible. The result is that NASA gets 4 new female astronauts, but the male astronauts feel that the women got off easy. Granted, the women went through a less stringent training regimen than the men, and it's all because of Nixon's ego, and that is kind of fucked up. But you know what's more fucked up? Not letting women into NASA to begin with. This would all be a non-issue if NASA let women and people of color be astronauts from the inception of the program. But in order to show the world that we're more forward-thinking than the next guy, the president forces NASA to fake the funk and pretend to give a shit about diversity, as if they ever had a second thought about the word. See what I mean? Progress? Bullshit. We hear these same arguments happen in the real world, especially with topics like representation of the LGBTQ community, affirmative action, and reparations. And this season takes place in the late 1960s, so it has a lot of room to explore these kinds of issues, and it takes full advantage of that.
That's where all these badass women come into play.
The second season does a bit of a time jump into the 70s and the 80s, and we see how much technology has progressed in this world where NASA gets encouraged to keep innovating with unlimited funding. But with every technological innovation, one thing is for certain. People are gonna figure out how to make it sexual.
TTP, guys, is time to penis. It's the time it takes for a player to use a new item to make a penis.
You give the public a shovel, they dig dicks. You give them a pen, they draw dicks. You give them some clay,
definitely gonna sculpt dicks.
The second thing that is for certain is that someone will try to figure out how to turn a technological achievement into a weapon. While one half of NASA are trying to plan for a mission to Mars, the other half is trying to arm space shuttles and build nukes on the moon. The Russians invade the American moon base and things get crazy as everything falls apart and the Cold War heats up into a proverbial Cuban Missile Crisis in space. Thanks to an inspiring gesture of goodwill, things calm down and the nations go back to their respective corners for a while. Then we get a tease of NASA touching down on Mars in the 90s, and I'm sure everything is gonna work out just fine when they get there.
We're talking about discovering life on another planet.
It's 1995 and it's a brave new world. More technological innovation. We got smartphones now. Ellen, one of the astronauts from season 1, has been elected America's first female president. NASA is looking more diverse than ever, and there are multiple vessels on their way to the Red Planet. You can call it, people. We did it. Pop the champagne. Everything's perfect. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm reading something here. I missed a note. Oh, actually, it says here that people still suck. Yeah, so racism, sexism, homophobia, and greed are still prevalent in society. As much as we've progressed as a people, there are still laws created to keep certain persons from thriving in society, so we haven't reached Star Trek level yet. Hell, in this season, they haven't even hit the really low standards of 2022. It was pretty easy to wag a finger at the way things were in the 60s and say, well, that would never fly nowadays. We've come so far since then. But then we get into the mid-90s and we see how far we still have to go. Even in this fake universe where we have Skype in the 80s, a space hotel in the 90s, and a female president by 1995, bigotry is still prominent in every major institution.
If you're a kid out there that feels like maybe you're broken somehow, like the world would be better off without you in it, I promise you, it's the world that's broken, not you.
Not sure if you're familiar with what astronauts and cosmonauts describe as the overview effect, but it's a term used to describe the psychological effect from seeing the Earth from space. As author and space philosopher Frank White explains, there are no borders or boundaries on our planet except those that we create in our minds and through human behaviors. All the ideas and concepts that divide us when we are on the surface begin to fade from orbit and the moon. The result is a shift in worldview and in identity. In all 3 seasons, the show touches on the potential negative effects of being in deep space, but season 3 chooses to discuss the revelatory nature of seeing the world from that perspective. I mean, when you're 100 million miles away from Earth, I imagine that these things that we let control our lives, like greed and bigotry, seem so incredibly small. Kind of the main idea of the whole show is that we should be able to see how messed up our way of living is after we've been able to take a huge step back and look at the big picture. I do have some nitpicks with with the show, as great as it is, it's still not perfect. One thing I'm not a big fan of is the character of NASA engineer and flight director Margo. She was in Nope. She was pretty good. I'm just not a big fan of the character because some of her storylines have been some of my least favorite of the entire series. Like at some point there is a whole subplot centered around the fact that she secretly plays the jazz piano. I was like,
do we care? Are we caring about that?
We're talking about changing the history of the world, and we have to take a pause so Margo can play out some goddamn Duke Silver story arc.
It might be cold outside, but it's about to get warm all up in my jazz.
It just felt like a story we didn't need to know about her. The show spans decades, so it introduces and subsequently kills off a lot of characters. But before I get out of here, I do want to gush over three characters. I'm only going to talk about 3 characters. Danielle Poole, played by Chris Marshall, is fantastic in this show. Marshall is just so subtle, natural, and believable in every acting choice she makes. The logical yet caring, no-nonsense vibe you would get from a military mom is dripping off of every scene-stealing moment of her performance. As a trailblazing black woman in NASA, based off of some real trailblazing figures in NASA history, she has a lot of hurdles to overcome. But her integrity and convictions make her the moral titpole of the show. But she's not without flaws, and she has to ask herself some pretty tough questions too. Joel Kinnaman as Ed Baldwin. This guy is what most people probably picture in their head when you say astronaut. Tall, handsome, male, white. I mean, this guy is like the rock star of NASA. The character is a hotshot pilot who kind of represents the older generation of the program because he was the first man in space and he was almost the first man on the moon. Dude is all about exploration and innovation and doesn't want to be bothered by these bureaucratic start shirts that run everything. I mean, what can I say about Rick Flag that you don't know already? Dude already has a handful of genre properties under his belt and is definitely the biggest name going into this series. His relationship with his wife Karen is, hey, Billy Butcher's wife is in this show. But his relationship with his wife Karen is interesting because she's not an astronaut. In fact, she kind of fucking hates the idea of being in space. Which is fair because I heard it gets uncomfortable as shit. But because of that fundamental difference in passion, they approach the idea of space exploration in different ways while still oddly seeing eye to eye. But their marriage is also kind of is total dog shit. It's a whole thing, just watch the show. And finally, Sarah Jones, who plays Tracy Stevens. She is an incredible actor and her character arc with Gordo is nuanced and heartbreaking. The character is everything I wanted Carol Danvers to be, and Jones has great chemistry with, well, really every actor on the show, but her and Gordo's scenes are particularly fun to watch. Well, not fun, because most of the time the conversation is sad as shit, but they bounce off of each other so well that it feels like these two have known each other forever, and you totally get their incredibly fucked up relationship. We kind of get the feeling that by the second season, Tracy is acting a little bit big for her britches. Yeah, she's fucked up and probably isn't handling her problems in a healthy way, but so is Gordo, so is Ed. So is Zeke. She's this sad, flawed character, but that doesn't change the fact that she's great at what she does. And it certainly doesn't have more of an effect on her work performance than her male counterparts. I just love this character and her growth from being damn near kicked out of NASA because she was straight up the worst student in the program, to busting her ass to be one of the best pilots at NASA, to being Earth's most celebrated hero. I've already spoiled enough of this character's arc. I won't say anything else. Again, there are a lot of great characters on the show, but she the real MVP.
You the real MVP.
For All Mankind is a quintessential science fiction drama. Fiction lowercase, science in all caps. I love a fun, fantastical adventure like Star Wars or The Fifth Element as much as the next guy. Probably more than the next guy. This is the Drunk Banthas after all. But I also love movies like Arrival and The Day the Earth Stood Still because they use crazy, larger-than-life scenarios to examine the flaws in our society. For All Mankind takes that sentiment a step further by rewriting history in an idealistic, Aaron Sorkin-y way that points a finger at the worst of humanity while shining a light on the better angels of our nature. My ranking, I loved it. And if you're listening, Disney, which I know that you're not, cast Sarah Jones as Sue Storr. It's what America deserves, but America in this timeline. Also, Joe Carey as Human Torch. That's it for this video. Thank you so much to all of our new and old subscribers. We appreciate all of the love and support. None of this would be nearly as fun without you guys, so from the bottom of my squiddly spooch, thank you. But enough of the mushy stuff. Keep an eye on the channel because we'll be talking about a bunch of nerd shit in the coming weeks and months. That Lord of the Rings show's coming out, Game of Thrones show's coming out, Rick and Morty is coming out. That was a surprise. But yeah, it's a great year to be a nerd. There's a lot of shit to talk about. I can't wait. But until then, stay safe, my little cosmonauts, and may the Force be with you.